Assalamu alaikum. Inshallah you're well, guys. So today I'm going to talk about the differences between an employment contract and training agreement you'll sign when you start your graduate or apprenticeship scheme, and the contract that you may sign as a qualified accountant. So as an example, the one that I've got in place currently with my employer. But before you get that training contract offer, you've got to go and successfully pass the application process. So if you haven't already, get off your backside, start applying to these roles, because a number of firms have already opened up their vacancies for 2022. Firstly, in most roles, you'll only sign the one employment contract, and that will cover standard terms such as your salary, your job title, your place of work, and your hours of work. Whereas if you're starting an apprenticeship or graduate scheme, you'll not only sign an employment contract, which covers all of those things, you'll also sign a training agreement with your employer. The training agreement will cover the exam side of your role and the support you'll receive from your employer. So it will cover things such as the start date of your training agreement, the length of your training agreement, which is normally 3 years for a graduate or 5 years for a school leaver/apprentice. It will also cover the number of days you're allowed off as study leave for each exam. It may also cover the method of study, so whether you're going to be face-to-face learning in college or whether you'll be doing online virtual courses. And you guys know, to successfully complete the ACA, you have to pass 4 components. And that will include 15 exams and professional work experience. So those 2 aspects I talk about quite regularly in my videos, but it will also involve passing the ethics and the professional skills development. Inshallah, I'll talk about ethics and professional skills in a future video. But for now, I'd say it's nothing to worry about as you go through your exams, which have a component of ethics in each exam anyway, and you build up your experience, you'll be ticking off and passing the ethics and the professional skills requirement. The biggest area that people struggle with is the exam side and passing their exams. And one thing to be mindful of, not worry about, but be aware that most firms will have an exams policy in place. So most employers will pay for all of your training costs, and that may include attending a virtual or a classroom course, your study materials, and also your first exam sitting. And inshallah, if you pass your exams first time, great, nothing to worry about. But if you don't, you normally have to pay any resit fees for that particular exam, as well as any revision course you choose to attend. So in this situation, you'll face an additional cost. However, like I've said before, don't worry about it, because inshallah in these schemes you are paid really well, so it shouldn't be too much of a burden. However, the more important thing to focus on is the fact that if you do fail an exam, you may find that your training agreement is terminated and ultimately you're fired from your job. And this can happen in 2 scenarios. So the first scenario is where you are continuously failing exams. So as an example, you may find that if you fail one of the first 6 exams, known as the certificate stage of the ACA, more than twice, your training agreement is terminated. And the second scenario is where you have what's known as a bad fail. A bad fail is when you failed by a big margin. So to pass the first 12 exams of the ACA, you have to score a mark of 55. And I think when I was training, a bad fail was a mark of 35 or 40. So if you got below that mark, I think it was in the certificate stage especially, you wouldn't be given the opportunity to retake that exam and you'd find your training agreement being terminated. That's the second difference. You won't see me being fired for failing exams now that I'm a qualified accountant. However, if you're on a training agreement, it doesn't matter if you're the best worker, if the partners all love you, you come in early, you leave late, the clients really like you. If you fail your exams, you could find that your training agreement is terminated, and there's no leeway. There's no bending the rules for you, because firms have to apply the exams policy consistently to ensure that they remain fair to everyone. I just want to say, guys, that the examples I gave for a bad fail and continuously failing exams were just that. They were examples. Each firm or organization will have their own exams policy in place. And at this stage, you may be quite worried. You're taking the first big step in your career, and I'm here telling you that you may be fired, not because you're not good enough at work, but because you don't pass those exams. And my honest advice here is don't be, because if you put the effort in, you go to college, you do question practice, you revise outside of work, you prioritize exams over your social life for a short while, inshallah you'll be fine. And even if you don't, you're struggling with the content, nothing's going into your head, you're not really enjoying it, well actually at least you can leave and know that accounting and finance isn't for you, and put your focus and efforts elsewhere. The third difference is what I call the retention clause. So employers will invest thousands of pounds into you, they'll pay for your exams, they'll pay for you to go to college, they'll pay for your study leave, and when you qualify, they don't just want you to leave, because they haven't seen a return on their investment. So what you may find is in your contract that you sign that there's a retention clause that if you leave in a certain period of time after qualifying, normally it's up to 2 years, you have to pay back a certain amount of your training costs. Now, if I was to leave tomorrow, I wouldn't have that clause or anything like that in my contract. The only time I would expect that to be in place is if my firm has paid for a senior qualification. So as an example, let's use the MBA. That can cost upwards of 50k. That's a significant investment my employer is putting into me. And normally, if you study for the MBA, there's normally a development path worked out for you to progress into senior leadership. So if you just leave after doing a 50k qualification, of course, in that instance, I may have to pay back some of those training costs. You may feel demotivated at this stage and be thinking, do I really want to do this? Fazan's telling me that if I fail my exams consistently, I may get fired. And on top, even if I pass everything and I do qualify, if I want to leave, I may have to face a penalty. However, it's not all bad. So long as you're passing your exams, there's also a number of financial incentives normally on offer. These incentives could take the form of a bonus or a pay rise. So I remember when I was at BDO, if you passed all your exams first time, you'd get a bonus of a few £1,000s. Again, another reason why it's important to have first-time passes. Also, you may find that when you've completed a stage of the ACA, so say the certificate stage, you receive a pay rise. And that will normally be on top of any annual pay rise you receive as well. So as a trainee, you could find yourself with 2 or maybe even more pay rises in a year. As a qualified accountant, I don't get that. I normally only get the 1 annual pay rise, which typically applies to all employees. However, my bonuses are normally bigger, and also as a qualified accountant, you can reasonably expect other benefits as well. So you can get a car allowance, which either means you get a car, or what most people opt for is cash. So this is where you're paid the amount net of any tax as part of your monthly salary. You can also find yourself getting shares in your employer. So normally those are used to reward loyalty, and they're given to long-term employees as they vest over a number of years. So although I agree it's tough, it's not all doom and gloom. If you do well as a trainee, you'll be rewarded as you progress, and inshallah have more benefits and financial incentives to look forward to once you become a chartered accountant. But that's it from me. Inshallah you found this video useful and it gave you food for thought. And as always guys, if you have any questions or queries, please feel free to comment below or message me on Instagram.